Hey, welcome to Fire Engineering's Humpday Hangout and to our show, Issues and Challenges in Today's Fire Service. I'm Chief Rick Lasky, and today, as you always, I'm partnered up with my co-host and good friend, Louisville Assistant Chief Terry McGrath, and we've got a good show for you with a much-needed topic that we need to discuss today. And as always, before we get any further, if you have any questions today, fire them off to us on Twitter. We try to get to them as best we can. But make sure you add hashtag FE Talk for fire engineering. So hashtag FE Talk, and we'll get to them where we can. Now, the boss, Chief Bobby Halton, is on the road, but he's supposed to try and join us today. So we're hoping Chief Halton will be able to join us. It'll be as he's rolling down the highway from his car. He won't be driving. Someone else is driving, so don't get all panicked about that. But Bobby hopefully will be joining us. And we'll get in there. So today, hopefully, with Bobby and obviously with Terry. But we've got a very special guest today, a good friend of ours, Jeff Dill. Jeff's the founder of the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance group. If you've ever been in one of my classes, I always mention it. I always mention Jeff. I always mention the foundation and his efforts, along with many others. There's a lot of people nowadays that have I guess it's a good bandwagon to jump on. When Jeff first started really pushing hard, there weren't really anybody. There was very few people out there addressing this issue. And now it's like anything else. There's a lot of other people jumping out there, and I think there's some that are doing good. Some maybe don't have the intentions as well. Where they should be. But Jeff does an incredible job, does an absolutely incredible job. So our topic today is mental health awareness, and we subhead that, Terry and I, with being there for each other 24/7, because it's easy, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, it's easy to say I'm there for you to fire, I'm there for you there, but that's the easy part, is being there, crawling down a hallway. The harder part is when somebody's going through some tough times. So welcome, guys. Welcome, Terry. Welcome, Jeff.
Good to see you.
Good morning, Chief. How are you?
Doing good, buddy. How's life in Arizona?
Hey, you know what? It's going to be a little chilly today. Only a high of 62. So, but we'll make it through.
Well, it's absolutely beautiful where you live. Hey, I forgot to mention, T. Trophy Club's hiring. I know Louisville's hiring. Let me put my hand over his picture here, because But anyway, we're hiring here, so. You can go to our website or get a hold of me, and we'll tell you how and why. And FDIC is right around the corner, everybody. FDIC is right around the corner, so make sure you're there. We're going to be doing a bunch of programs. It's going to be a great year. We got a lot of great instructors as usual. Terry, before we go any further, a good friend of Jeff and mine is Gordon Graham. You had Gordon Graham in for Louisville. Is that guy not incredible or what, Terry?
Yeah, we brought Gordon in, and we did a combined training class between our police department, fire department. We put all of our supervisors through it. So we brought the professor of all things risk management, and so anyway, yeah, he came in for 2 days and taught a lot of supervisory skills and techniques. And of course, he's always entertaining to listen to, but. If you've never had the opportunity to sit through a class of Gordon Graham, and I always tell everybody that even if the topic is risk management, go to it, because I guarantee you it will be worth the 4 hour, 8 hour, whatever time you spend in there. I've never met anybody that doesn't walk out of that room to say, I didn't learn something, and he keeps you engaged the whole time. So it was a great couple of days.
Oh my God, he's absolutely incredible, and we appreciate the invitation, going to dinner with you and your bride, and with Gordon and Chief Thompson and his wife, and just to sit there. I love Gordon. He's been a friend of mine for a long time, and I always joke about the fact that my wife will not pull into a gas station if there's a gasoline tanker in there, because with Gordon, if it's predictable, it's preventable, get out of there, drive away, whatever. But awesome guy. I just didn't want to move forward. I was talking about him, especially with our topic, because he's got his arms wrapped around so many different great things. But one of them is risk avoidance and knowing how to deal with everything. Again, our topic today, folks, is mental health awareness, being there for each other 24/7. Well, first off, Jeff, being the founder of the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance Group, as I say very quickly now when I'm in class, ffbha.org.
Right.
because I want everybody to get the website. How did you come up? Give us the thoughts and the history behind creating that foundation.
Sure, I appreciate it. I will give you the Reader's Digest. Actually, it was because of Hurricane Katrina. Chicagoland area sent down firefighters to help out our brothers and sisters in New Orleans. And when they came back, I spoke to many of them, and they said, you know what, we saw some horrific things down there, destruction, devastation. And they went to their employee assistance programs, their EAP counselors, and they became frustrated because the EAPs didn't understand the terminology and the language and what they actually went through. So I thought, well, how can I get back to my brothers and sisters? So I went back, I got my master's degree and became a licensed counselor. And actually in 2009, I founded Counseling Services for Firefighters. And I was doing workshops to explain to counselors and chaplains that, hey, if you want to work with us, you need to understand us. We're a little different. Not that it's bad, we're just a little different. Well, in 2010, I started getting emails and phone calls from all over the world saying, do you do anything about firefighter or EMT suicides? And I said, I didn't know we had a problem. And I contacted, the USFA, the NFA, NIOSH, OSHA, and no one kept any data on our lost brothers and sisters. So hence, in 2011, FBHA was founded. We are the only organization in the United States that tracks and validates firefighter and EMT suicides, which is important because in the last 5 years, I have personally spoken to over 850 fire and EMS chiefs and heard the stories of our brothers and sisters and the reasons why. And we build all those in our educational workshops to the point where we have 7 of them now. And I travel all over the United States and Canada. I speak at FDIC. I'll be speaking again in April. So that's just the real quick history of us.
Well, and like I said, you've been making a difference. Terry and I were talking about this not too long ago about people that are willing to, there's a million people out there teaching tactics and strategy classes, Mayday stuff. Everybody and their mother now is teaching a class on leadership, company officer development. But this has been a long time coming. Like I said, to begin with, it's a topic that's needed some very much in the way of attention and a topic we need to discuss more often because, we've all been there, a lot of us. I mean, there's different times and different things. And I've said it for years. And Terry, you and I have talked about it so much times. It's not normal for a firefighter to see what they see. And we can all be about as macho and tough as we want as the men and women serving the fire service. And that's all great. But, there's a certain toughness that has to be there when you're dealing with people when they're at their worst. You can't go into someone's house and start crying. You have to be there. You have to be that rock. You have to be that person that show to lean on, that here they come, they're taking care of business. But that relief valve, and it's not normal for a firefighter to see what they see. It's not normal for them to see, deceased babies and amputated arms and someone who's really bad off after an accident or burned bodies or just in life, all the things that are going on with people. And then I'll couple that with maybe something at home that's going on and the rest of stuff. It's not normal. So I can't think, if every class I promote and I talk about you, Jeff, and what you're doing with the foundation.
I appreciate it.
Because I believe in it wholeheartedly. One of the things we start talking about, and I want to ask you and ask Terry this as well, is, and I mentioned this when we were offline for a second, it was 2 years at least or 3 years ago. It might have been 3 now, but 2 for sure. And for our viewers, Jeff, obviously with what he does, he's involved with social media a lot because that's how a lot of us get our messages out and announcements and things or just points. And Jeff posted on social media, he posted, "Suicide is not prejudice, rural or urban, volunteer career, May is Mental Health Awareness Month." There's something so almost probably right on board. And I just took that, again, to our viewers here, I just took that, and if you've been in my class, you heard me say it, I just took that and I added hashtag be a real brother and sister and just retweeted it and shared it. And about 3 hours later, I checked it and I had like a handful, if that, of likes and favors. So I decided to post a leadership quote from a dead football coach, Vince Lombardi. I love the man. I love some of his stuff, but I always worried that some of these people say everything people said they said. So I posted his leadership quote, and by the time I went to bed, had over 1,500 shares and over 2,000 retweets. And I'm like, how off our mark are we that we'll turn around and hit a button that fast and share a leadership quote from a dead football coach, but we won't just post, say, hey, there's nothing wrong with saying I need to talk to someone. There's nothing wrong with that. And Terry, I mean, I know we've talked about it. We had the folks on here, Jeff, and I'll ask Terry. We had the folks from Dallas on right after the shooting down there. Right after the shooting, we had the 1st New Battalion Chief, and we had one of their snipers on here. We talked about the stress and things. I mean, everybody wants to focus on the headlines, but they don't want to focus on that those are real human beings, man. Terry, you and I talked about that.
Yeah, and first of all, I'll say, Jeff, I appreciate you taking the time today, and I more than I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate your passion for this topic and for taking this on. To me, it's somewhat of a daunting task, and I think we can sit here and break apart the culture of the fire department. And we talked about a little of this before our show started today about just what the fire service, what it is in a fire station. And so you're stoic, you're a rock, you're a piece of steel, you don't show emotion, and you get done with this call, get ready for the next call, and by all means, don't shed a tear and don't show compassion and don't, so we have a long way to come. I think we've made a lot of progress in this area, but I think we have a long way to go. And so, it's something that I had mentioned earlier, and the way I think of the fire service or public safety in general is, you're going to spend a 25-year career constantly exposed to horror. And it's, unless you rotate out of a line position into something like I do, which I sit behind my desk all day. So not much traumatic happening to me on a day-to-day basis, but the constant exposure to this stuff. And I think, Jeff, you said it before we got started. We are great problem solvers, but sometimes we don't do a good job of solving our problems. We are fantastic at walking in a complete stranger's living room and in 30 seconds dissecting whatever tragedy has befell that household. And we will break into our automatic mode, whether it's a medical call, a fire call, a dog's foot that's caught in a drain. It doesn't matter. Firefighters are great at it. But when it's over, we go back to doing whatever we were doing, and we don't ever take that time to diagnose and fix our problems. And I think that's where the awareness, the training, the overall industry needs to pick up the slack. And then, I'd made a note on my book here that I think it comes down to captains, station officers. You have to know your people, and you have to know when something's wrong. You have to know what the triggers are. You have to know, and the only way you can do that is to talk, communicate, treat them like family, and you treat them like your kid. And I think anybody that has children, you can look at your children and know when something's wrong. And it's odd, I guess, because as a mother or a father, you wouldn't hesitate 1 second to pull that child aside and say, look, what's going on, and digging into it. But we don't do that in a fire station.
Well, I think you're absolutely right on a couple of counts there. The problem solving, 2 points. I firmly believe it's what I call cultural brainwashing. It starts in our fire academies that we train you to be the best firefighters that you can. Survive fire ground, cover your brothers and sisters back, and make sure you get the job done, solve whatever it is. And like you said, we come back, and that lives with you 24/7. And just a quick how it worked on me is that at 21 months old, my granddaughter was diagnosed with retinoblastoma, cancer of the eye, and she had to have her right eye removed. And I remember standing around the nursing station when the doctor took her through the back. And my thought was at that time was, hey, I'm supposed to do something here. Not only am I her grandfather, I'm her father. I'm a firefighter. I'm supposed to do something to save that eye. And it's like, wow, where did that thought come from? That audacity to think that you can make changes and you can save that eye. And that just comes from that, that training that we get as firefighters. And the second thought is the officers, Absolutely. But understand, they're talking about things that they've never been trained on, never have any experience with. And that's why we firmly believe, one of the first parts of creating a successful behavioral health program is that you have to have training in the fire academies and you have to have training in your officer classes to make them comfortable, the ability to communicate and ask the tough questions. Just like when you do a 360 size up, guess what? When that firefighter comes into your offices, hey, can we talk? You have to know and see where it's going and be comfortable in that communication.
Well, and I think, Jeff, you're exactly right with that. And one of my favorite topics to teach is a history class I do called Our History. This should be day one, the Fire Academy. Before you could get anywhere else in the fire service, you understand why we exist, where we come from, why we do what we do. And then I say that the next subjects that we just skip through really quick is fire behavior building construction. But when we back this up and go, okay, before we get into cutting roofs and stretching hose and doing all the other stuff, we need to be talking about this. And, and I go back and I think we've come a long way, but we haven't got there yet. And I think about when I was younger, my brother passed away when he was 9, I was 13, and I got told to stop crying at his funeral.
Right.
And I was made to feel that that's wrong and all that. And I was in an effort which somebody else was dealing with that stress of losing a child. At the same time, I think that he was thinking he was toughing me up or whatever. I agree. The company officers are the ones that should be taking care of this. But if we're not providing them with the information, if we're not providing them with the training, how can we expect them? And I'll give you an example. And Terry, I won't mention this guy, but you know exactly who I'm talking about. Jeff, we had a truck captain in Louisville, one of my go-to captains. Great man. Tough as nails. All right, tough as nails. I can't even tell you about his personality because people know who I'm talking about. But good guy. And we ended up with a couple bad calls. He had a bad month. He had a car go off into the lake with 7 occupants. We had 6 drownings, 6 months, a 32-year-old, 6 CPRs, a military 6 helicopters, a big thing. Then we had a couple bad baby calls, and then this same particular shift ended up with a double fatality, 2 kids in a fire. And we brought the group in, we brought the team in, and he made the comment, he says, I don't need this shit. I don't need that. And I'm not, and I'm like, this is in the kitchen. So I waited a little bit and I got him off on his side. And I said, I told him, I called him by his name. And I said, look, you're one of my favorite captains. You're one of my go-to guys. You're one of, guys love to work with you. They feel safe with you. I've watched you. You're one of my favorite people. I know you don't think you don't need this. Actually, you do, but you don't need this. Just by saying that you don't says you do. But you know who needs it more than you do are those firefighters, and especially that new guy. And they're never going to ask for help when they hear their captain who they look up to.
Right.
And rightfully so. They look up to you. I love you, but they're never going to ask for help if they think, well, if my captain says I don't need to do shit, then they're going to say this. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's part of the culture you're talking about with the company officers is getting them to be trained to be able to recognize some stuff and different things like that. But at the same time, how do you to be able to support this stuff? So I said, this is what I need you to do. I said, first of all, you're going to go back in there and say, look, I just run out my mouth. This is a good thing we're going to do. And when you get together from the diffusing, you sit down. And when somebody from the team says, so does anybody want to start? I want you to be the first one. And you know what? You could say, it sucks. I hate this. When we failed, we feel like we failed. You didn't fail, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I want the guys to see that you embrace this. So that's the one point. I agree with you 100%. But I guess my question to you is, I don't know, is it just the media nowadays, social media? Are we just hearing about it more because, it seems like you can't go to Facebook or Twitter or fireengineering.com and not read about another brother or sister taking their life. And I don't know if it's just more, you've done your research. Are the numbers higher, or is it just that we're seeing it more because of the media?
Well, when we look at our data, I mean, it's 934 overall. But our earliest one was 1880, and it's documented in the New York Times. It was a fire chief in Auburn, New York. In 1906, the New Orleans fire chief took his life. And so at those times, you saw them in the newspapers, where nowadays, or during the mid 70s, 80s, and 90s, there was not a lot. And then in 2000, you start seeing a little bit more information. And now, like you said, with the social media, organizations are not afraid to put something out, say, in memory of, and they don't give the details, which is fine, but people start talking, and that gets around. Now, for us, we're very confidential. We've never given out a name or an organization in all our years, and that's just our promise. But are the numbers? And I think it's also because life has become a little more difficult too. So you take that cultural brainwashing of, I have to be strong, I have to be tough and handle it, don't show any weakness, and now try to apply it into your personal life. Because when we look at the known reasons for firefighters taking their lives, the number one known reason is marital and family relationships, and followed by depression. Number three has moved up, unfortunately, rather rapidly, and that's medical and health. And that is because firefighters being diagnosed with cancer. Their response is they don't want to be a burden to their families, so they are ending up taking their lives. And number four is addictions. And number five, PTSD. Now, these are all wrapped up, within our culture as known. So it's really difficult when I call to validate reports, and chiefs will say, well, it was, they were going through a divorce. So it really didn't relate to the fire service. And my retort is, well, I can understand your position, but how do you know? Absolutely. How do you know that? Because this firefighter, either male or female, they saw so many things and they don't want to go home and talk about it. So they keep it within themselves. And then guess what? In a few years, you change. And I make this statement: if you've been in this fire service, you've changed, whether you realize it or not. And understanding that the only way you can recognize that is by listening to others who say, hey, Jeff, you've changed. And then understanding that, yes, I might have.
Well, and you're exactly right. And one of the things you and I, excuse me, and Terry talked about ahead of time was, and I had a very good friend of mine explain to me about the whole, and I'm just going to say it because SHIT is an acronym for Stack High in Transit, so I can say it, but you're that every now and then a person's shit bucket just fills up. Right. And it's, I mean, I know there's very, very tragic events. We know that we've seen in the history, a very highly publicized rescue that gets national, international attention. And then that firefighter afterwards, there's no, we see what happens there. But that's what I was saying earlier, we're talking about, I'm like, I don't know if it's just, there's things going on at home. I kind of take issue sometimes, once in a while, I should say, when people say we're failing, the fire service is failing a brother or sister. Excuse me. Now, are we doing enough? Absolutely not. I agree with you. We're not even close yet. We've come a long way, not close to addressing everything, and that's why it's so important for people to have you out and really pay attention. But I just think that you've got this whole, like I said before, was financial, family, work. There's the tipping point, right? It could be one thing that could create that problem, right?
Absolutely.
And Jeff, the when you went through that order to kind of, I mean, statistically it makes sense, and if you're going to make a pie chart, obviously we can assign a number, but I can listen to those right there and without being overly analytical. I don't know how you draw a line between one or the other, because the marital problems could be caused by the PTSD and the wacky schedules and the lack of sleep and the so to me it's a huge melting pot of one big, it's a lifestyle or a culture that you are in, and wow, I mean, it's really, to me, is really hard to draw a line between, if you stumble across a part of your life, I'm having marital problems, and that's secondary to the fact that you've got these other three problems that started somewhere, nothing got fixed. This one rolled into that one, and that one rolled into that one, and now you just and at the end of the day, you know what you got? You got a tragedy. And with that, I meant to say this at the beginning of the show, and one of the things that kind of brought this whole thing to light was the recent tragedy out there in Orange County with a fire captain that took his own life, and I think that happened last week, I guess. But obviously the thoughts to his family and prayers to that organization. But at any rate, I'm interested in the numbers behind all of this. But at the end of the day, I think the problem's the problem, and that is lots of communication, and lots of early assistance.
Well, and absolutely. And what's so vital nowadays is that we have really targeted the spouses and partners, because we have to let them know as well, hey, what to look for, not only in what your first responders and the way they act, but how you're responding and reacting. So it's become one of the more popular workshops is for our spouses and partners, because they have their own warning signs that, hey, something's not right for us.
They used to send home just a piece of paper. Remember, Jeff? They would send a piece of paper home after a line of duty death, for example, saying, okay, look for this, whether it's diarrhea, whether it's appetite, anger, all this stuff. And they used to send it home with the firefighter. So you can imagine where that didn't go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In the back seat somewhere, crumpled up. And so we, like I said, we have a long ways to go. Are we moving forward? Absolutely we are. But me, the way I look at it, I still think we're 10 to 15 years away to where it's in every fire academy. It's in every certification for state firefighter 1, 2, and 3, every officer class. Every EAP is trained, every chaplain, all the local resources. So like I said, we have a long ways to go, and every organization has policies and guidelines on how to help their people through these difficult times.
Well, Jeff, one thing that we talked about, Terry brought a very special guest on the show, one of his firefighters, Andy Allison. And Andy ended up electrocuted at a house fire. And Terry, we'll just call it what it is. He was misdiagnosed. And Bobby was on, and Bobby brought up a good point. He goes, the military finally is closer to where if you get burned, they send you to those doctors. If you have, bone, we send you. What happens a lot in the fire service is, nowadays, all right, you get hurt, and let's say there's an illness, you get hurt, whatever, you're on duty. The first thing they want to find out is serious to go to ER? Can we send you to an urgent care facility? And they send you to an urgent care with like a GP who looks at you. And I'll just say it, Terry, correct if I'm wrong. I mean, everything I took, not everything, but a lot of what I took about from Andy was that he was misdiagnosed, right?
No, absolutely, yeah.
They diagnosed him with like PTSD. Well, he was having all these medical issues from the burns he received that they missed. Not to say he didn't have problems. I'm saying he's a great kid, great young man. But we're finally now, like you said, I think it's important that we've got to get to a point where we're training people to recognize stuff. We're sending them to the right people because, it's so easy to get blown off. It's so easy to go somewhere. So many guys are uncomfortable. I know when I went through counseling years ago, I did everything I could to convince the counselor that I was okay.
Right.
Because I didn't want to go anymore. I wanted to be able to go. I was involved in a shooting years ago. I was a police officer, shot me through the windows of the police station, and I had to go, and I'm like, I'm okay, I'm fine. All the guys I'm working with are Vietnam vets, and they're okay. And I just did everything. Yeah, I'm fine. And I played it up really good so I didn't have to go anymore. So we talked about where the training starts. I want to, before we miss this, one of our viewers asked a question. Sonny's one of our viewers. He asked a question. First question was, how can a person, Jeff, who may not have been thinking about suicide talk and help someone who has? You've talked about it. I'll talk a little bit about this a little bit later, but about indicators and then suggested actions to take. What would you say to address Sonny's question? It's posted off on the right for us.
Right.
What would you say?
The things that we promote is be direct, challenge with compassion. So when you feel or you see someone that is suffering, be direct and challenge with compassion. We always ask 2 questions that you have to ask, and that is, are you feel like killing yourself, and do you have a plan? Because in the counseling world, having a plan tells us they've walked this through. And so you need to know that. But it's discretionary time. Meaning that if someone's talking to you and it takes you back, then tell them. Say, man, I've never dealt with this, but you know what? I'm going to walk the walk with you. I'm going to find those those resources that are available for you. I know of so many officers and firefighters that take their brothers and sisters to AA classes. They sit outside. They take them to marriage counseling. They walk the walk, and they're there 24/7. So those are being direct and challenging, and it's okay to say, hey, this caught me off guard, or I might fumble this a little. I don't know exactly what to say, but I'm here. And the key that we teach, the key number one thing is learn how to listen. And that's role reversal for us, because whenever we go somewhere, it's always we're trying to solve the issue, understand, get the assessment, and just learning how to listen, because it doesn't always have to be suicide. It can be many other things that someone's suffering, but learn how to listen. And, there's actually one way to practice, Chief, an excellent way, is turn on your TV and put on closed caption. And you'll be amazed how your eyes want to go right to the words. So practice and focus, because that day when that firefighter comes to you and says, "Can we talk?" you have to learn to listen to every word, not just every third or fourth word. So
and that's I love that. I've never thought of that before. That's a great comparison. It is, because how many times have people come in to talk, and I've told people before, Jeff, in class, I've been a fire chief a long time. Sometimes the best thing you do is just what? Just listen. Just listen. Pay attention. Instead of trying. Some people try to. Well, I'm not trying to answer, right. And just listen. Let them talk and pay attention and pick up on some things. So hey, part two to Sonny's question was, he asked us to please talk about what is around for, and I think I know where you're going to go with this already. What's around for volunteers to seek mental health? What's there for volunteer firefighters, EMTs, first responders?
Yeah, I was a volunteer for the first 6 years of my career. And so I know coming back from calls, usually you want to get home because you have to get to your job or you want to get home to your family. But so it's incumbent upon the fire chiefs and EMS chiefs to find local resources, qualified counselors that understand and work with firefighters, and chaplains as well, find chaplains that work with them. But I work very closely with the National Volunteer Fire Council, and they have that Share the Load program. And, you can, I think it's nvfc.org / help. And you'll see the numbers there for volunteer firefighters to give a call, and someone will answer it right away.
Well, and the National Volunteer Fire Council is an incredible organization. I know they've been dealing with that and taking care of that. IFF's got some folks out there doing, they're really, let's shift gears just for a second. I mean, I'm amazed, but I'm very happy that we're finally talking about cancer in the fire service. We've had to come up with phrases like "wash your hood Sunday." Well, we've been telling people, Terry, you've been telling people in Louisville, wash your gear, wash your hood. A burnt helmet don't make for a cool firefighter. I don't care who you are. I've seen some of my mentors, some of my idols, put a new helmet on, and you know what? They're the same person. The helmet don't make the firefighter.
Right.
So. But I kind of knew you were going to go on that path, because I'm like, okay, for a volunteer. But a lot of our volunteer firefighters, I think, end up feeling neglected, because all we do is talk about the shift work and all different stuff, and we don't talk about the fact when they leave their house, and it's 80% of fire service, they race they get to the firehouse, they go handle a call, and then they don't go back and they don't sit around the kitchen and talk or in a bunk room. They get back in the car a lot of times, and they drive back home. And you talk about having to turn that stress off and on. It's one thing, like Terry says, you come back to the firehouse and that. Now you're going back and your kids are like, okay, Daddy, Mommy, can we keep reading the book and all? You know what I'm saying? I think the stressors, I think sometimes we forget about a lot of our great volunteer firefighters out there too.
Well, absolutely. I can remember many times calls in the middle of the night, and you're thinking, "Oh man, I only got a couple hours. I got to get back and get home and get to work." And when you were struggling with some difficult call, it made it very difficult to work that following day.
Absolutely, Terry. You're very fortunate, Louisville. Your former human resources director is now one of the assistant city managers, Melinda Galler. Melinda Galler is when I always talk about her, Terry, I always talk about, I think that's probably the HR director that the Department of Labor calls for advice. She's so good. She's so dialed in. She's so passionate about her employees that I know with Louisville, at least we had a human resource department that truly does care about their employees. They took the EAP seriously, your confidentiality, because Jeff, I know a ton of people are scared. They're scared to, who's going to know and all this stuff, and my job's on the line. And if you're a good boss, and I'll say this, if you're a good fire chief and, you're not all, obviously if you're golfing right now, you know what the hell I'm talking about. If you're a good fire chief, you would absolutely embrace this, and you would absolutely, ensure someone. And Terry, you've been there. You were you and Tim, my right-hand two guys for years, the three of us together as a team. There are times where we had to take people and manually insert them into the EAP, take them off shift. But at the same time, we ensured them, look, your job's not going anywhere. We're doing this because we care about you. We're doing this because we love you and we want to see you have a long, fruitful, great, healthy career. It's not, I'll fight to the death to protect your job. You know, I want you to know that. And I sometimes think there's bosses out there, chiefs, that I think they, number one, there's some that don't care. I think those are few, but then there's a bunch that just don't know what to say. And
well,
I think,
it's, you know, that it's interesting. I mean, what you bring up, and I'll brag about, you know, our city as a whole. I think this is a tremendous organization, top to bottom. And I'm not talking about just the fire department, I'm talking about this entire city. But, you know, yeah, we were very fortunate in that our human resources, and you're right, Melinda is truly one of the most passionate and compassionate people I have ever met. She is absolutely a hard-nosed, decisive leader when she needs to be. But she also knows, I think, that when there are times that door has to close and you got to peel back some layers. And ultimately, I have always felt, and I've witnessed it many times, that every decision she makes is for the benefit of the employee. And now, not everyone will agree with me, and that's fine. But I sit here and think, you know, how truly blessed I am in my situation, because I know that if Chief Tittle or Chief McNeil or myself had to walk into City Hall and say, I've got a problem with an employee and I need to get them help, and they will break their backs to make sure that that gets done. But I think we're in the exception, perhaps. And so I think of the struggles that an organization has, that it's barrier after barrier after barrier. And let's say the person's identified in a firehouse, maybe a top-notch captain, station captain, battalion chief identifies, all right, we got a problem. So you're going to start the ball rolling to guide this person in the right direction. And then you find the person that is just administrative and nope, we can't do that. No, I'm sorry. That's, you know, they'll have to do that on their own, you know, whatever the case may be. I hear those stories. And fortunately, I don't have to experience those here, but that's an absolute true reality to a lot of organizations.
go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Chief, you had mentioned a few things, and I just want to point those things out. Human resources. You know, when fire departments bring us in for training, I tell them, hey, bring your human resources people in, your EAP. Let them understand what exactly is going on out there. And that's important that you involve everyone, because it takes the whole entity working together. The other thing is, you had mentioned, you know, you want to make sure your firefighters have a great career. It goes beyond that. It goes into retirement, because we track retirees that take their lives. Out of the 163 that we have validated, 36 took their lives within the first week of retirement. And we want something to be a lot better than that. And
what do you see, Jeff? Stop right there for a second, please, if you would. Mm-hmm. What do you see? Because I'm going to ask you about warning signs in a second here.
Right.
Let's just talk about that. Because let me back up. Years and years ago, back in the 80s, they used to say, we'd go to classes, safety classes, they would say the average firefighter collects 18 months worth of paychecks after they retire before they pass away. And I was like, it's bull and all stuff. Then I'm like, oh my God, this guy, Joe Phillips, 6 months afterwards, cancer, stroke, heart attack, all this different stuff because of their lifestyles or choices, no air packs way back when, so on and so forth. Well, now it's very true what you're saying. It's like, wow, what happened? He just retired. She just retired. What do you see as a reason for that?
Well, we know that the three reasons that we really highlight in our retirement workshop is that firefighters deal with the loss of identity. They've just, this is all they've ever known. And so when all of a sudden you're stopped, and nothing against this, but when you've been working calls and the adrenaline for 25, 30 years, and now you're a greeter at Walmart, that's a shock to your system. The second one is a lack of belonging. Hey, you know what? We were this such and such group, and we belonged in this shift, and this is who I related to. I wore my T-shirt in pride in showing this is who I belong to. And then the last one is lack of purpose. And we have spoken to so many firefighters who retired in their mid-50s and said, man, my life is over with. What I got to look forward to? And so we really have emphasized that retirement issue, we have to start that early on, especially early on, because, hey, we're all one slip off a ladder changing careers.
Well, and Terry, you and I talked about this a long time ago. We had an individual come in, a retired captain, who, he used to purposely come up to get his paycheck because that gave him a chance to come up and see the guys. And he was in the kitchen pouring himself a cup of coffee, and a young firefighter, Jeff, came up to him and said, "Can I help you, sir? Or
Right.
you need some help?" And he's like, "Well, I'm so-and-so." And the guy says, Are you lost, sir? Do you need some help? Points at coffee. And he says, "Chief, I poured that coffee back in that pot." He goes, "Look, I don't expect that young man to know who I am. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. I
Right.
spent 32 years here, and I'm like, I feel right now like I never worked here a day in my life." And we talk so much about the brother, sister, the family, and guys get the T-shirts and the hats and the stickers. I'll brag on Louisville again. Terry, you guys do a ton for your retirees. You give them the opportunity to, whether it's EMS week to come and eat, they have luncheons, or they just, to keep them. I think some departments, it's a shame you retire. They don't even send you emails. They don't send you announcements. They don't tell you that Jeff Dill is retiring next week, or there's a promotion, or there was this. It's like you said it. You take this retiree and you just sever them out of the organization.
Yeah, you give them a party, a golden X, and out the door they go. And I've been in places training. They'll ask me to have lunch, and they'll see a car pull up, and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, it's so and so. What's he doing back again?" Well, doesn't he have any better place to go? And maybe not. And so that's where we have to really look at that within the retirement system. And the last point I wanted to make, Chief, is the employee assistance programs. As you know, most of them are selected by a bidding process and low bid. And this is where we've gotten fire departments to become proactive in saying, "Hey, when the bid comes up, we want to be there to interview." And just ask the counselors, "Hey, has any of you ever worked with fire or EMS? Would you like to be trained?" And those type of things help out the bidding process and work in unity with the human resources as well as the fire department members.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, and we said before, the time always flies by. I don't want to lose one thing that Terry and I wanted to get to you about, Jeff, was you talked about the top 5, but we want to mention that in closing again. Let's talk warning signs.
Okay.
Let's talk warning signs, and then suggested courses of action or whatever. But let's talk more. We got viewers, and there's a ton of people going to watch this afterwards when it's tape version. Give me some indicators. What am I looking for? What are the warning signs?
Well, when we interviewed over 500 firefighters in EMS that were suffering, we found the top 5 warning signs, and we use the acronym RAILS, which is recklessness and impulsiveness. I mean, it just both either on the job or in their personal life, when you see things that just don't sound right. And, I don't believe in guns. I don't mind that people have them. But if I was to walk in the firehouse and tell my brothers and sisters, "Hey, last night I went out and purchased a couple handguns and an assault weapon," they think, "Hey," and the usual response when I ask that in the class is people will say, "Hey, how much did they cost? And where'd you get them? And think, are we going hunting?" Well, that doesn't sound right. Something's not right, because I believe we have great gut instinct. We can tell when a fire is going bad. We can tell when a patient's about to go down. And now you have to start listening to those gut instincts. So recklessness and impulsiveness. The second one is anger. Anger, and typically in the fire service, it's usually handled through discipline. And guess what? We have to really start understanding that anger, there's some underlying issue that firefighter or EMT is suffering, and trying to understand it. Granted, you can't have people kicking buckets around the firehouse and shouting at the public during pub ed events, but understanding that there has to be some type of underlying issue. And it could even be, at times, anger masks fear. The third one is isolation. When they're just not hanging around their brothers and sisters, either on duty or off duty. And we do a great job of promoting isolation in the fire service. Just take a look at our bunk rooms nowadays. After 4 o'clock, everyone's separate, the Wi-Fi, they're on their phones. And so isolation, I think, is probably the easiest one to see. But the fourth one really caught us off guard. And that was loss of confidence in skills and abilities. These were firefighters that were struggling or even took their lives because they just couldn't do the job anymore. They were coming back maybe from injuries, and so they had no confidence in skills and their abilities. Or maybe they were tackling things in their own personal lives, and it was affecting the job. And then, of course, the fifth one, sleep deprivation. I would have loved it on that first day of the academy if they would have said, "Hey, I hope everyone had a good night's sleep, because it's probably your last one for the rest of your life." And the number 6, what we're seeing for retirees, is that they are losing their sense of humor. They lost their sense of humor, and that's what families have been reporting to us, because that's our coping skill. And now when you're retired and maybe these images are starting to dance in your head and you don't have anyone to really talk to about. So those are the six actually, top warning signs that we have found through interviewing fire and EMS.
Well, and here's one thing, and I keep going back because Terry and I have been friends for so long. Terry, you've heard me tell the story. About standing in the hallway and looking at a picture of somebody and then seeing a totally different image of someone when they walk by. I think, and Jeff, I say this in class, I ask people, how many people have kids? Okay, even though you don't even have to have kids, what are the signs that a child, whether it's teenager or whatever, is traveling down the wrong path in life? What are some of the signs you see that your child or someone else's child may be actually traveling down the wrong path? And everybody can tell you, Jeff, well, their grades go down. Who they're hanging with, they wear darker clothes, they become quiet, their anger, they're just all these different things. They're disheveled, they're dirty. I'm like, so everybody here, whether they have kids or not, can spot that with someone else's kid. What about the guy or gal that used to come in? They're early, their uniforms dialed in, they're crisp, they train, they're smart, they're good, they're on top of things, and then like a year or two later, they come in, it looks like they had their shirt tucked in the hole of a bowling ball and their hair, and if it's a guy, you got to remind him to shave, and it's just all of a sudden the same signs we would notice with some of us kids, we miss with our own people. And all of a sudden we realize we have someone that's got a dependency problem, or they got stuff going on at home, or I'll say it again, their shit bucket's full. There's just stuff going on, and now we're 2 years behind because we were too busy doing this or doing something else to pay attention to it. So I think part of that is we're not even, you said, listen, we're not even seeing things that we would see with someone else's kid.
And we're always talking about sort of the negative aspect of things, but there are some positive. We were down in Florida when a female firefighter came up to me, and she actually sent me a couple pictures. I use her story in our workshops, and it shows just, the dark circles under her eyes. There was just like the lost, glazed look. And she said one day a battalion chief came up to me and said, hey, you seem to have changed. You're not the same. Let's go talk. And she said, this gentleman saved my life because he came up and told me that I didn't look the same. And I said, well, I commend you on that, but I commend you that you listened. You listened to him. And now you should see her picture that she sent me, and seeing her, her eyes are all sparkly. She just looks fabulous. So yes, it does make a difference. And that's why we say, be direct, challenge with compassion, and then also do that internal size up is what we call, meaning look at what's going on in your life, learn to listen to others who see you best.
Chief, I wanted to make sure that, and to promote, Jeff's organization, obviously, but if you do nothing else for yourself or for your organization, go to this website, the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance, and navigate under, I think it's under resources, but there's a video on there that I guess was done by Al Jazeera called Fault Lines. It's 24 minutes long, and it is really, really, really impactful. One of the things that I saw in that video that, because everyone's pretty good now about using the word routine, like, it was a routine call, and then I don't know what went wrong. But one of the things that someone mentioned in there, and I think it was a coworker of a firefighter who killed themselves, and there's, making a statement, he was so well adjusted and normal. We just, we never expected it. And I don't know, that statement catches me by surprise a little bit, because I always get back to, sometimes you got to get in people's business, and sometimes you have to, how many times has someone, I don't know, you have an interaction in the kitchen, and somebody walks off back to the dorm, and the rest of the guys are kind of standing there chopping onions, looking at each other going, what the hell was that about? But we're real good at just acknowledging that happened, but maybe not digging a little bit or taking the time to start putting the pieces together and go, okay, that's a change, and that's not normal, or that's unlike that person, or certainly unwarranted in this situation, whatever the case may be. And I think that perhaps some people get in that mindset of, you know, oh, that guy's really just squared away, and man, I would never suspect that of him because of the way I see him day to day. And this truly can impact. And this video, I'm telling you, I watched it this morning, and it was, if you do nothing more, send that link out to your people today. I will send it to our organization today with just the message that, look, it's 24 minutes of your life, and I think this is worth watching because it really was pretty powerful.
And you bring up a great point, Chief, especially in regard to how we see others. How many times have you heard your firehouse, and I heard it over my career, is that you're gathered around and someone walks off and someone turns to them and says, man, they must be off their meds today. Yeah. It's like, well, you know, maybe something's going on in that person's life and maybe we need to talk to them.
Right.
Exactly. Well, and Jeff, you know, we've been talking obviously about the great organization you founded. Terry just talked about it. I mentioned this before. And again, to our viewers, if you've been in one of my classes, especially at Company Officer Academy, I always bring these up, and this is a bifold. And I'm gonna steal some of Jeff's thunder here because I do this in every class. This is a bifold that every firefighter, every officer should have in their wallet or have somewhere. I told you before, we talked before about, you know, I asked people in class, so where do you keep the EAP number? If one of your members just calls you, whatever, where do you keep that number? If at least a phone number to get them, you know, I'm always going to push people to our organization where they should go. Granted, some of the programs are not the best, but I'm still going to do that to the professionals because I am not that. I'm a fire chief. I'm not a professional when it comes to counseling and dealing with all that. And I asked him, I said, so where do you keep the phone number? It's in a book, it's on a board or whatever. Why not your cell phone? Why don't you have one of these? And I always get scared, Jeff, I do this in big class because I always tell them, if you email Jeff, Jeff will send you these. Now, if you're going to email him and look for like hundreds and why don't you send a check to the foundation, because he still has to pay money to get the foundation still has to have these printed, but he will take care of you. Because I always get scared that you're going to have a million people. Anytime I talk about policies, I know Terry's going to get bombarded with requests. But folks, I'm telling you, it's got the information on this is this little piece of paper that you can stick in your wallet. It's in mine right now. I carry them with me. It's the pocket assessment guide. It has all Jeff's contact information right on there. It's got all Jeff's contact information on there. When you flip it over to the first page, top 5 behavioral health issues, suicide signs affecting firefighters and EMS professionals. Right on the inside, right there. Things we've been talking about. Top 5 steps to assist your brother or sister is on the next one. And then you flip it over, and here there are some resources. There's resources. This you could keep in your pocket, in your wallet, you know, wherever you keep your stuff, keep it in your locker, wherever, somewhere else. It's this big. I've never seen something so small be able to do so much, you know. And if you can't have Jeff out for a program, whatever, you know, again, it's a little piece of paper that's making a difference in the fire service. I just want to thank you publicly, Jeff, for this, because
I appreciate it.
I know I always make that pitch in class. Get on board and figure out what's going on with your people and take care of them.
Well, like I said, I appreciate your support. You know that. I've stated it many times, both privately and publicly as well. So thank you.
Well, you know, we're kind of closing in here, and I don't want to go over too far because we always run out of right, T? We always run out of time because it's an hour to cover some great topics. But what advice we've been talking a lot. If you could, first of all, let's do this. Let's do the top 5 again. Let's talk about the top 5 reasons that we see first responders, you know, what you see take their lives. What are those 5 again?
Our top 5 known reported are marital and family relationships, followed by depression, health, medical. Number 4 is addictions, and number 5 is PTSD.
All right. And you talked about how you shared with us how we should be more, I'm not even going to say progressive. I'm going to say we should be more aggressive with wrapping our arms around this and taking care of you. I always say it. I don't know what brotherhood you belong to, and there's a her in my brotherhood. But if you truly care about your brothers and sisters, you're there for them all the time. Anybody can be there and crawl down a hallway with you and fight a fire and be in an extrication, a pin in or whatever, a pin in an accident. I always said, if you want to see where your real family is, go through a bad time. Turn around. You'll see who your real brothers and sisters, who really takes the time to talk to you, to grab you, to say, hey, man, you're getting off work. Let's go grab a cup of coffee, or let's just go talk, or I don't care if it's the back parking lot, or you go somewhere else, whatever, that someone cares enough to even talk to you about it and all that stuff. If you truly are brother and sister, then you'll do that, and you'll take care of that. But what advice would you give? What advice would you give to? Let's start off first with to the company officer, the chief, on how to address all this.
Well, I believe that every organization, whether volunteer or career, has to have some form of behavioral health program that has, and we have a list. If people want to contact us, send us an email, we'll send you the 11 steps, and they're all in order. And it's because of our 5 years of experience. And you don't have to do them overnight. It'll take a couple of years, but starting with a behavioral health program, create resources, your local resources, meaning if they don't want to go to their EAPs, then create a committee that goes out into the community and actually vets counselors. We get calls on a weekly basis from counselors or from firefighters all over the United States saying, Jeff, do you have someone in my area? Well, you as an organization can go out and do that. We have 11 questions that I ask, that I vet. And if people want those questions, have them email me as well. Also work on your CISM teams and your peer support teams. I'm a true believer in them. I've seen them across the United States. They work. Peer support, I really like, because those are specifically trained members within your organization that are that first line of help for your brothers and sisters. And then don't forget about chaplains. Don't forget, how to bring them into the fold as well as train them. And never forget the families as well. So those are some first couple steps that we recommend for organizations as well as officers to get involved in helping and understanding their brothers and sisters.
Well, and I want to interject it real quick before Terry jumps in there as well. I came to Trophy Club as interim fire chief back in May. I'm just trying to get him to the next, for the next guy or gal to come in here and take the reins here. And the second week I was here, we had our Trophy Club Emergency Volunteer Association, a group of volunteers that work with police and fire here, and they meet in our training room. And I introduced myself, and they all threw their business cards at me. And Dr. Sarah Lepaca, she gives me a business card, and it looks like this. And I went, "You're one of Jeff's people." She goes, "Yes." And I went, "Oh my God, this is incredible! You're one of our residents and all this." So I said, "Dr. Lepaca," I said, "So how did the class go here when you did the class for our people here?" And she goes, "I haven't done it here." And you talk about, is there someone in our area that could help us out? I'm like, how do you have someone in your own organization that you haven't even tapped to meet with your own firefighters that goes out? She goes, "Yeah, I'm going to be with Jeff in Tennessee next week, and we're going to be at the tent." I'm like, here, and she just nodded and shook her head, says, "I know." And I go, "Okay, we're gonna take care of that, so we're good there." But what we talked about that for officers and chiefs. What do you say to that firefighter? What advice, if you had a room full of new ones and experience, what do you say to the firefighters out there?
For the firefighters, and I speak at fire academies, I say, give me 5 minutes. What I tell firefighters is never lose who you are, because the job will try to turn you and to make you into something that you might not be. And when you lose your identity, that can become a problem. So if you're just starting out in the business, never lose your own identity. So.
Very good. Very good. Terry, what do you got, buddy?
Well, earlier we talked about, and Jeff has mentioned it several times, about getting in the fire academies and the training. And, honestly, when you think about the selection of topics, and of course, whatever, we're doing forcible entry, we're doing, truck ops, we're doing, hose deployment, and the list goes on and on and on. But, you can make every analogy that we utilize a skill or a specific set of resources, and we get trained up and really, really good at certain tasks on the fire ground. And to me, this is no different than anything we do on a day-to-day basis. So we have a RIT team, right, that stands by at a fire because we're trying to plan for the most catastrophic event, and we train for it, we're ready for it. And so this is kind of what this is to me. And that is, you've got to have that RIT team that's ready for this and be very, very proactive in it. I can't stress enough that you have to have a mechanism at each individual station, each individual organization, and the ability for people to communicate about this. And the ability for someone to walk in and, we've talked about this on this show before about that mindset of the organizations that have this rookie, you don't touch things, don't say anything, get over there and make tea and fold towels, and you can speak when you're spoken to and all those sort of things. If that's what you're telling people, then how do you think that they're going to get through some catastrophic issue that they're having if they don't feel like they can sit down and, when you talk about this, you're bearing your soul to somebody.
Right.
So if the culture doesn't allow for it, shame on you. And you should make it a priority. So,
excellent point. Excellent point.
Very well said, T. All right. We're here closing out things, and Terry, as always, bud, I'm so blessed to have you as my partner and a very good friend and co-host of this show. Jeff, I can't thank you enough for coming on, and I can't thank you even. I can't even begin to thank you enough for what you're doing for.
Thank you.
For everyone, not just the fire service, for everyone, for EMS, for law enforcement, and for everyone's families. It goes so much beyond just the firehouse, if you will. If someone wanted to get a hold of you, have you come out for a program, bring you out for a program. I know you got different programs that you do to be a guest speaker, maybe, or whatever, talk to a fire academy, whatever, or just reach out to you for some information. Is email, is that the best avenue to get to, or maybe the website?
Absolutely, email is. I have a little touch of OCD, so I respond to them pretty quickly. So yeah, just jdill at ff, like firefighter. So ffb is in Bravo, ha.org. So jdill at ffbha.org.
And that's, like I said, I can do that. I do it so many times. I say it's ffbha.org because I say it so many times. I've got it down. Terry, same thing. If they want to get a hold of you, buddy, email.
Yeah, T, first initial, last name, T McGrath at cityoflouisville.com.
Outstanding. Well, folks, this has been another great hour with another great friend, Jeff Dill, the founder of the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance group, ffbha.org. Great website. Get a hold of Jeff. Reach out to Jeff. Don't hesitate. I promise you he will get back to you. If he doesn't get back to you, that means he's like either on an airplane with no internet or he's up speaking to someone, but he will get back to you immediately if you don't hear from him right away. But great organization. Folks, thank you, Jeff. And hang on there with us. Our next show date is January 18th. You can catch, as always, some great shows every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Central Time here, 1 Eastern. Get to interact with some great and incredible people. We always have a handful that join us live, and there's just a ton that join us later on. This is another one of those episodes you need to share with your people. You need to sit down at the firehouse, in your training room, on your meeting night for your volunteer outfit, as shift change, you roll call, and sit down and go through this. Speaking of roll call, don't forget to catch your roll call tips at FDIC.com. FDIC is right around the corner. I hope to see you in one of our classes. Again, we're all on Facebook. We're all on Twitter. You can get me at 5alarmleadership@gmail.com. In closing, as we wrap things up, we always say this about the men and women that are serving our armed forces. We would like to include also our brothers and sisters in the law enforcement family we have. Please keep all of them in your thoughts and prayers, especially our folks on the law enforcement side need us more than ever to support them. And the key words with that is never forgetting means never forgetting. So be safe all. God bless you. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays, and be safe. Thanks, everybody.